for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O's, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O's, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche And after 22 years, Raymond Mark!
The sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network. He is Pierre McGuire. I am Jimmy Murphy. Pierre, how are you today, my friend?
I'm loving your Wi-Fi.
Shh. Now we're screwed.
Don't say that.
You jinxed us.
Good for you, Jimmy.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Let's see. We got another good 55 minutes in front of us, but let's keep our fingers crossed. Pierre, we got a great show in store as always. Got a good guest coming on, or a great guest, I should say. He's well known in the Washington, D.C. area by Capitals fans. John Walton, longtime radio play-by-play man, will be joining us shortly here on the Eye Test. We'll talk about the Capitals, who right now, Pierre, are a Stanley Cup contending team that I don't think anybody thought those words would be next to them at this point, except maybe some people around here. We liked them, but we weren't sure they'd be this good.
No. I thought they'd be a playoff team. I didn't think they'd be this good.
Yep.
Spencer Carberry's done a really good job. We talked about that last year before they were even in consideration for a playoff spot. What helped them last year, obviously, Detroit floundering at the end because of the injury to Dylan Larkin. So they took advantage of that. That's not their fault. They didn't induce the injury. They just took advantage of an opportunity. They're legit. The one other thing about Johnny Walton I think is really cool. He's a 3-time Calder Cup winner with the Hershey Bears. And I know people in Washington and I know people in Hershey, they understand there's an amazing symmetry there because it's been a long time, producer for a lot of really good players that play in Washington. The Hershey Bears program is phenomenal. John really made his mark in broadcasting working there. And so, I remember going into the old building in Hershey many, many moons ago. Bob Hartley was coaching there. Bob Hartley. So that's a long time ago. So good thoughts about Hershey. I've never had a bad trip to Washington, probably because I'm not in politics. But I can just tell you all the great – and I was talking about it with the great Mark Madden before I came on with you today in Pittsburgh. And – Marc-Andre Fleury probably played his last game ever in Washington.
Last
week. It was so appropriate. They made the glove save against Ovechkin.
Yeah.
And so you think about it, I'm like, all those games that I had the opportunity to do with Doc Emmerich and Eddie Olczyk, sometimes with Kenny Albert, and it was amazing the nastiness between Pittsburgh and Washington, Jimmy. Amazing. And Marc-Andre, obviously, right in the middle of it. But it started taking me back. Now, again, I'm dating myself, but we were down 3-1 to the Washington Capitals when I was coaching in Pittsburgh. Now, they didn't play in downtown Washington. They played in Landover then.
Yep. Was that 91 or 92?
92. We did a tap dance on them in 91. But 92, they had us in the first round. They had us. They really did. Mm-hmm. Terry Murray was coaching. Keith Lane was his assistant. They had us, I can tell you. And Scotty just coached beyond belief. Scotty just took the series over. The players did it. Scotty's message was resounding and got it done. And I think that broke the Capitals fans in their hearts for a long time. Yeah. For a long time. That they had us, they were up 3-1. Dino Ciccarelli was on it. Bondra was amazing. Langway was so good in those days. They had listen to this defense. Calle Johansson, Al Iafrate, Sylvain Cote, Kevin Hatcher. Three of those guys had 20 goals on defense.
That's some badassery in there too. Like
those guys are big. Kevin Hatcher was like one of the most ferocious fights I saw when I was in Pittsburgh was Rick Tocchet and Kevin Hatcher getting after one another. I mean, hellacious stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, as soon as I was talking to Mark about this, I started thinking about how many games have I either coached or broadcast in Washington.
A lot.
Just because of the Pittsburgh-Washington dynamic has been so big for so long. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. So I'm glad John's coming on. That
was your idea, and I'm glad you suggested it. And I think what's amazing too, Pierre, just keeping with the Pittsburgh-Washington theme. So, they were head-to-head, Ovi and Sid and Pittsburgh and Washington for so long. And it seemed like, a few years back, we're kind of looking at the future and we're looking at, okay, well, both teams may be heading for a little rough spot. We're not going to say they're going to fall off the face of the earth, but they're heading for a reset, rebuild, whatever you want to call it. And Washington now has just fast forwarded that so much compared to Pittsburgh, who one might argue has been unable to start that process, right? They're sort of stuck, right? And we were talking about this off the air today, Pierre, and you look at the job like that Washington is done with their, and I'm going to point right at their amateur scouting department, because that's what's fueled this, is that the players they've been able to bring up Hershey, the players they've been able to filter into their organization, the winning culture that they're getting down in Hershey, that they're able to bring to Washington and have kept this thing going. I mean, it's amazing. If you had asked 2 years ago, I would have had no problem saying, you know what, 2 years from now, no, Washington's not going to be in the playoffs. And there's no shame in that. It's just the way cycles in sports go. But somehow Washington, through their scouting, at both levels, but more so at the amateur, has been able to really just stay afloat and even more.
So this started with George McPhee. When George went there as a GM, you got to remember the first year he was there, he and Ronnie Wilson went to the Stanley Cup final. Now they lost to Detroit. Now that Detroit team was the start of a dynasty. It really was. Like, they were at another level. They swept them and it was over. But it started then. So George,
only the goalie was in that.
Yeah. George, Brian McClellan, who's now the president of hockey operations, Chris Patrick, who's now the general manager, Ross Mahoney, who's their chief scout, Stephen Bowman, who's been there since I actually hired him in Baton Rouge to work for me, and then he went right to the Washington Capitals. So I'm proud of Stephen and what he's done. And then they go out and they hired there's a really bunch of smart guys, like Brooks Orpek's working there right now. Stevie Richmond's working there right now. Dan Brooks. Dan Brooks is a U.S. college guy who's lived and worked in Russia. He's done a really good job with their free agency guys at the college level. He travels all over the world. It's not an easy job. So they've done all this with all these great scouts. And I think they don't get enough credit for their development. Washington, that is, because they develop a lot of guys. They don't get enough credit for their drafting. And I don't think Hershey gets nearly enough credit for what they've done in Hershey. Hershey's just a phenomenal producer of players.
Well, I think we'll ask Walton about this when he comes on. I mean, Connor McMichael, I think, is a perfect example of that, Pierre.
Yeah.
That's a guy who went through the system, paid his dues, and look at how he's succeeding right now. And
perfect.
Example of that on a management level is Patrick. I mean, I was just looking at his resume and the years he's put in to get where he is. This wasn't, I'm not going to name names or anything, but I'm just saying, I think too many times, and not just in hockey, I think in every sport nowadays, Pierre, and maybe, it's the advent of analytics and all that, but too many times we kind of see kids, and when I say kids, I know they're men, but, guys in their mid-20s to late 20s get fast-tracked too much, and they don't pay their dues. And it means something in sports, whether you're the athlete, whether you're a coach, or whether you're management, to pay your dues and learn the right way. It really does pay off in the end. And I don't think we see enough of that these days.
No, I agree with that. I think that's good. You know where I stand on that. I'm a big fan of mentorship. It's a huge part of the deal. So he obviously has a father, Dick, who is tremendous. And he's got an uncle, Craig, who I worked for. And, they're a legendary hockey family, Exactly. So there's a lot to like there. But I can tell you right now, people say, oh, Washington's no fun to play against. They're no fun. They're no fun to play against.
No, they're built for the playoffs. That's the type of team they are. They're just, like they're one of those teams, yet they're able to do it on a more longer term basis than most teams.
You think they'll be better when Ryan Leonard gets there?
Oh, gosh. They've got some good things coming.
Oh, my goodness. They got a bunch of stuff coming.
How about Hudson? I mean,
they got stuff coming. They got stuff coming from all over the world. They do.
How about this Protas kid too, Pierre? I remember asking you about him a couple years back, and you said keep an eye on him. But look at how he's starting to blossom right now, and the role he's finding.
Well, his skill level is excessive, and he can shoot the puck from about 12 feet. There are not a lot of guys in the league that are that big that can stand on their feet in that area and still shoot the puck the way he does. And he's good. I mean, and then you look at their pro scouting. They stole some players. Like getting Chikrin out of Ottawa, that was a good pickup because he doesn't have to play in their first tandem. Like he's not playing ahead of Sandin, I should say. He's not playing ahead of John Carlson. So he just slides back in the depth chart. How about getting Nicky Dowd?
Yep.
Like Nicky Dowd is probably the best. He and Jake Evans are probably the two best depth center icemen in the league.
I'd agree.
They probably are.
I'd agree.
They probably are. Brandon Duhaime, like I taught the kid out of Providence College. Like what a pickup. Getting Mangiapane out of freaking Calgary. He plays on the start looking at the guys they got.
Yep.
It's not just their amateur guys. Like all their they've done a really good job there.
They have, and let's continue to talk about this right now with the radio play-by-play man for the Washington Capitals. Join us here in the eye test, John Walton. John, how are you, my friend?
Jimmy, I am well. And Pierre, great to see you as well. It's been a long time.
Hey, Johnny, you know what? I'll never forget being in Pyeongchang with you. You were the voice of reason in Pyeongchang. You kept it together for us all.
I just did. I couldn't even figure out where to go to dinner half the time, but I appreciate you saying so.
You got
Jimmy, before we get going, I just wanted – John and I went through a very similar thing, fighting against cancer, and I want to commend you, and I'm glad you're doing well. So way to go, Johnny.
Well, I appreciate that, Pierre. And along the way, I heard from you as much as I heard from anybody, and it always meant a lot. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Sure. John, as we were just saying, the Capitals right now are kind of the prime example of how to do I don't know what word you want to use. I'll just say reset. Like, there could be other words, but how to do a reset on the fly and remain competitive. And the fact that they've been able to do it too, John, I want to get, your take on the significance of it in the middle of what's going on with Ovi. How important has that been? Because let's call a spade a spade. I mean, if Ovi was doing this for a team that was, down the bottom for the next 3 years, it wasn't going to be the same. But for him to do it in meaningful games, with a team that's continuing to blossom and build, I think it came at the right time.
It's been a pretty masterful rebuild by Brian McClellan and now Chris Patrick to be able to be where this team was 2 years ago, where you got to the trade deadline in 2023 and said, you know what, we don't got it. And Garnet Hathaway goes out the door and Dmitry Orlov goes out the door. And one of the things that this organization has done, I think, really well in lockstep with that is being able to identify guys that are with other teams that say, you know what, it didn't work out there for whatever reason. And Rasmus Sandin 2 years ago was that guy. Great wheels, offensive guy. Toronto didn't see a future for him there. And now he's become a terrific 200-foot guy with Washington. So it was a combination of being able to sell and acquire some draft capital, which they did, identify some guys they want to bring in. And last year, don't forget, even though the Capitals made the playoffs, they were sellers at the deadline last year too and doing the same thing and getting to the point where he said, okay, now we know we've got a little bit of money to play with. And as you guys were just talking about, identifying, okay, Andrew Mangiapane, last year the contract, Logan Thompson, last year the contract, getting guys to come in here that they think can be a help, that are not only good players but good people, and turn this into something where you meld a room together with 7 new guys with a core that was already here. I don't know that I would have thought they would have been at the top of the Eastern Conference, if I'm being honest, but they've been able to cobble that together and turn this into what's been a pretty good juggernaut in the first half of the season.
John, because of all the time you spent on the Iron Lung in Hershey especially, hockey people travel a lot. And I travel a lot, as you know, and I like to listen to the radio. And one of the things that stood out to me, I listened to your broadcast on Saturday, and I called Jimmy right away. I said, we're getting John Walton on.
You did.
Dude, I'm telling you, you've made that ride for me so much fun. And I didn't give a poop who won. Washington, Rangers. It didn't matter to me. But you were so good, John, at it. And I wanted to know, we talk about players being developed. How much of your style did you develop in Hershey before you got to Washington?
Oh, yeah, a lot. I mean, Hershey is the ultimate proving ground outside the National Hockey League. And coming in there, and I replaced Dave Mishkin, who's been in Tampa for pushing a quarter century now. And Dan Kamal, who was with the Atlanta Thrashers, was there before Dave. So, I mean, there had been a history of guys going to the league. And when you're around 10,000 fans a game and fans that do not settle, ask any fan there, they're going to say, well, listen, Hershey and Washington, they're kind of equal. They're not really subservient to Washington. It's a 1A situation. Yeah. And, they demand excellence. And I think that only makes you better. And for me, I had a lot of great influences along the way to, kind of refine who I wanted to be as a broadcaster. And being not just the person who calls the action and what's going on, but I want you to be able to have that feel for me and for Ken Sabrin, who's been my partner here for 14 years, to be able to put together a show that says, hey, listen, those are two guys we'd like to hang out with. Like, we have fun with one another. We poke fun at each other. We want to be honest with the call. We want to tell you what's going on. If the Rangers are doing something good, we're going to tell you that. But we also know that it's entertainment, and we want to be able to bring all of that in the course of 2.5 hours. And if we do that, I feel like we've done our jobs.
Well, you do. You definitely do. And by the way, Jimmy, Sabrin might be the toughest color man on the radio in the league. Sergio Lamesso and him. When Sergio was in Montreal, that'd be a good battle. But Sergio's kind of out of it now. So when I was coaching, Sabrin was playing, and he was a tough piece of business. I'm just going to tell you, he was a tough piece of business.
He was. He is still.
He's still a big guy. Like, I remember doing all these games in Washington, John, and Ken would be down hanging out with me, and I'd be like, I'm not pissing him off because he might just smack me right in the mouth.
John, you referenced, or you said something that interested me there, and I want to go to one player on it. You're talking about getting players that maybe it's just not working out in one place, but we believe we can fix it for him here. We can help him find his potential here. And I think a really good example of that probably not a lot of people, obviously for his contract, but just the way things had gone, is Pierre-Luc Dubois that they brought in there. And I know they got, around the league, people were like, what are they doing? Why would you do this? Why would you take on that contract? What do you think they saw in him that they felt, you know what, we can make this work here?
I think they went to school on where he'd been previously and talked to a lot of people. And the verdict was that whether it was Columbus or Winnipeg or Los Angeles, I think he wanted to be in a place where he felt the most comfortable. And, we were just in Toronto a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of people had asked, the guy that we knew in those previous stops, he could be brilliant or he might not be there some nights. And I said, I got to tell you, through now half a season, the Caps play game 41 tomorrow against Vancouver. I haven't seen it. I've seen on and go 200-foot game all the time. And the points are there, not necessarily the goals, but I think the thing that's impressed me, fellas, has been the defensive side of the game. I didn't know how good he was defensively. He's outstanding. And being able to shut down Austin Matthews and William Nylander, and the Caps went in and beat Toronto twice in their building. And he was a huge part of it both times. So I think that was obviously from a on the hook for the contract standpoint, that's a pretty big decision. But it's funny because over the course of the last few years, I remember the first time, Pierre, and I know you'll remember this, when Tom Wilson signed his first contract, everyone was like, oh boy, that's a lot of money for a guy that does nothing but fight. Tom Wilson does a lot more than that. Now the whole world sees that. Now he's on pace for 35 goals. The same thing, in looking at a guy like Alexei Protas just last year. They lock him up for the long term, a little bit more than $3 million. And it's like, wow, he only scored 6 goals last year. What are the Caps doing? You know what? There's a little 3-dimensional chess going on over in hockey operations. I just look for the right color smoke coming out of the war room down the hall, they know what's going on down there. And every decision seemingly, look, nobody's perfect, and sometimes things don't work out. But, more often than not, going out and getting a guy like Matt Roy, who's not going to be, maybe the sexiest pickup, but he's been unbelievable. He's kind of like when they signed Brooks Orpik 10 years ago and coming in from Pittsburgh and being that physical, not necessarily going to light it up offensively, but a guy who's going to help you out on the back end and just do nothing but hit and defend. And, they found those guys, identified them, and, turned into what they've turned into right now.
I'm so glad you brought up Tommy Wilson, because I've known Tommy a long time, like you've known him a long time. I'm going to say that Barry Trotz and Lane Lambert helped fix Tom Wilson. Do you agree with that or no?
Yeah, 100%. There was a lot, I think, that Barry Trotz, for both of those guys, they left an imprint on this franchise, even though they've been gone a while now. In terms of a better 200-foot game for Alex Ovechkin, too, for that matter, and bringing just a across the board better feel on how to play the game while they were here. And I think a lot of that lives on. And Pierre, just the culture of things too. And I think this is what is so impressive to me, that when so many guys have come in here and immediately they say, I felt like this was family. Logan Thompson told me during camp, he's like, I've never been more comfortable anywhere else. He'd only been here for a couple of weeks. Pierre-Luc Dubois, when we were in Montreal, I felt like, okay, here he is in his home province and he puts on a show and he gets a goal. And, I felt kind of even emotional after the game. It's like, this has just been the greatest thing for me in coming here. And I think a lot of that under when Barry was here, and whether it was Nick Backstrom or TJ Oshie, now Tom Wilson, and now leading into that, those guys are huge in this room off ice, and they are the first people to call when guys get traded or get signed here, and immediately it becomes a family of a locker room. I know a lot of teams like to say that, but I'm telling you, like, I'm looking on the plane and these guys, we got an hour flight home, that 40 minutes you're in the air when you're not landing, you're not taking off. These guys are all standing around each other. They're all talking. They're all laughing. Even wins, losses, doesn't matter. They just like each other. Mm-hmm. And the chemistry part of it and the inclusion of whether you're the first guy on a roster or the 23rd guy on a roster is just really impressive. And I think that's something that, if you say, like, what goes on behind the scenes, why does Washington work? I think that's a big part of it.
I couldn't, Jimmy, what John just said is so spot on. That's how you win. That's how you win. You really do.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned, let's go back to last year. You talked about how they were sellers, but then they go on to make it to they make it to the playoffs. They're out after one round. But my question to you is, how much did what Carberry did between the deadline and the end of the season to help them get to the playoffs, to keep that culture you're speaking of, to keep looking forward, to not dwell on, hey, our manager just sold this guy or just traded this guy. How much of a pivotal role did he play there to what we're seeing now? Like, how much did that stretch build the confidence for what we have now with this team?
I hadn't really even thought about it that way, but I think there's probably a lot of truth to that. It wasn't a team that scored a lot of goals, but it was a team that played pretty well defensively. They leaned on Charlie Lindgren a lot down the stretch, and Charlie almost willed them. Never quit. And even though they didn't win every night, even down the stretch when they got in, if you remember, I mean, they had a hot stretch in March. They faded a little bit in April, but they won when it mattered. And they went into that game 82 in Philadelphia and said, you know what, they're going to find a way. And they did. Yeah. And I think to that point, I think it was incredibly valuable. And one of the things that has definitely played forward for this year was Connor McMichael and Alexei Protas being able to get a taste of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Yeah, they got run out of the gym pretty quick by the Rangers, but they got the feel for what it was like to be on that level. And I think it kind of helped that preparation. I talked to Connor McMichael a lot during the early part of the season. And I said, when did this click for you? Like, when did you become this guy that is now on pace for pushing 40 goals? I mean, he had 18 last year. Like, what's different? And he's always will refer back to the offseason and the preparation, both physically and mentally getting ready for the season. And I think, in just seeing a little bit of swagger in him too, there was a game against New Jersey back in November where he and Nico Hischier are going at it. I mean, here's a captain of another team, right? Great player, been around a while, first overall guy. And Connor just giving it to him on the ice. They get in the penalty box. They're still going at it and giving it to him. And I just think he thrives on that fire, that being able he found that. He was just a guy on the roster coming up from Hershey for the year, maybe even a couple of years. And I think he really found his hockey voice this year. And I think a lot of it goes back to the end of last season.
I got to ask you, John, one of my favorites is Nicky Backstrom. So we'll get to him in a second. I had a great relationship with Kuznetsov, and TJ Oshie and I have been friends a long time. Those are mainstay Washington Capitol guys. How has that changed the dressing room dynamic that you're kind of talking about?
I'll tell you, it's when you say it in consecutive. I mean, even going back to the beginning of last year, where Backstrom was still on the depth chart and Kuznetsov was still on the depth chart, and Oshie's still there, and you say he's going to be the bumper on the power play, and all of those guys are gone. So to be able to replace that and have the prospect pipeline, nobody enjoyed the World Juniors in the NHL like Washington did, and all that went on and what happened there. So. There are the Calvary's coming, and the next wave, the next young guns, they're coming, and to be able to transition, that's what makes this year kind of incredible to me. Is that we've talked about Ryan Leonard's going to be something, and we watch what Cole Hudson does, and Eric Smatejko with Latvia, and it's goes on and on and on. I mean, not to mention Andrew Christo, who probably should have been on Team Canada.
I think, did he get traded? I think he's on the way to getting traded in the Western Hockey League, by the way.
I think that is. I know Matejko was just dealt to Ramusha, which sets him up great for being able to play Memorial Cup.
Memorial Cup, exactly right. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, this next wave is coming, but in the meantime, you've got this assembly of guys where. Andrew Mangiapane, dollar for dollar, was kind of that TJ Oshie replacement. Come in, see how it goes, and evaluate when you get to next summer. But, it was a lot to fill. And I think that to be able to have this team together with all those guys that you just named, to not have that skill set and those larger than life hockey personas leaving the door. I mean, that's a lot to replace, but I think they've been able to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. You mentioned Logan Thompson before. What have you thought of him so far in the season he's having?
He's a great dude. I mean, that's the thing, 16-2-2 is outstanding, and he's been really good. I mean, just through the month of December, team save percentage was approaching 93%. So the on ice has been great, but he is a character. And I think, goalies always kind of have that swagger. Charlie's just kind of this down home. He's happy to go fly fishing and do his thing. And Logan's a little more brash than that. I think they get along.
Cassidy told me that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, it was funny because the one time we've done this every other all season from opening night to this minute, it's been Charlie, Logan, Charlie, Logan, Charlie, Logan. The only time it changed, and Spencer didn't say it at the time, he did admit it after maybe a week or two after. That's the reason he did it. He wanted to set up Logan to play Vegas that second time in Las Vegas, and Logan beat him twice. And I just the congregation of Vegas media, and they've got a lot there coming into the room, and they just like, whatever. Well, we want to talk with Logan, and he sat there, and he couldn't have been nicer. But you know what? He even said, "It's like, I said some things when I was here. Maybe I shouldn't have." And but I mean, as broadcaster, I mean, we love that, right? I mean, he always is happy to talk. It's just goalie philosophy. Look, sometimes it hits you, and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, it's just and just that mentality and what he's brought to the room. He definitely is a big asset here.
You're one of the more personable people in the league, and I say that because I worked with you and I've been around the league for 35 years. So I say that as a sign of respect. So I got to ask you this: how many guys from the opposition, when you know that Logan Thompson's playing, how many will say to you, "Hey, he catches with his right hand"? Do they even know that?
Yeah, that's right.
Do they even know that?
I don't. I would like to think they do. What's crazy is that, I mean, has there ever been a team that's had two righty catchers? Because that's what we got. I mean, with Charlie. So I mean, I don't know from a scouting standpoint. I always ask that question, of guys in our room, and I don't know how some guys like, I don't care, or say, no, yeah, we noticed, we scout, does it change the way you approach something? But I mean, it is a weird wrinkle that, no matter what, even in a rotation, I can tell you this, you're going to have a righty catcher going tomorrow. You usually know who it's going to be.
Jimmy, though, like I said it to Jimmy off the air, and I said, I wonder how many people go to John or go and speak to Locker or whatever and say, hey, shoots, he catches it with his right hand. We got two guys like that. I don't even know, because I'm going to tell you right now, one of the nights you beat Toronto, he made some glove saves, and I'm not sure the Leafs knew that he caught with his right hand. I could be wrong, but I don't know.
The guy, when I think details, like as somebody who would pick up on every little detail, Dan Ruzanowski in San Jose comes to mind right away as someone will come in. Maybe the first thing he asked me this year when we played the Sharks a few weeks ago. But I mean, there are people that notice, and then I'm sure there are some that probably don't. But it's easy to notice here because it's all we get here are righties.
Hey, Jimmy, the only reason he brought up Dan Ruzanowski is because he went to St. Lawrence University. That's the only reason.
I know how to play to the audience.
John, I got one more thing I want to do before we let you go. We want to go to this clip right now, and then I'll ask you my question. So here we go. If it is. Yeah. Oh, maybe it's not playing.
We're working it.
I guess it's not going to play, but you were privileged to call the 1,000th point for Alex Ovechkin. Do you feel like you'll be calling another milestone within the next couple months?
Yeah, I do. You know what? It's crazy, but I thought at the beginning of the year, maybe, and then the way it was raining in, I even thought, on November 18th, Alex has a couple of goals in Utah, and we're in the third period, and it's a blowout, and the Caps are going to win big. And just saying, even speculating, we were talking on the air, it's going to only a matter of time for national media start following us around, and then lo and behold, leg on leg with Jack McBain, and then it's halted for 6 weeks. I was like, oh, well, maybe not. I mean, obviously, it makes the math a little tougher, but when you look at he doesn't get a goal in Buffalo, but it seems like every time he touches the puck, it's going in. And maybe it's an empty net, or maybe it's lining one up on the power play. Maybe it's, just lining it up vintage style and trying to make it happen. It's funny, they wore on New Year's Eve the Screaming Eagle jersey, the black jersey they hauled out a couple of times for the 50th anniversary season. It's Alex's favorite jersey. And he has always, up until that night, he'd always scored a goal, at least a goal in it. And he didn't score that night. So in the third period, he's just firing away. He's just trying to funnel in every little thing. He's like, listen, I've never not done it, right? But it's that mentality, I think, that, the schedule gets a little easier for Washington from here. After this weekend, they only have 2 back-to-backs the rest of the way. Yeah. And I really think that's going to help. We've had a ton of them already. We were really front-loaded with back-to-back. So I'm hoping maybe the schedule will be a little favorable for that, a little bit of rest in between. Right. And as much as we've seen over 2 decades here, when he has his eye on something, I remember him going into St. Louis a bunch of years ago, and we had 1 game left. He's sitting on 47. He wants to get to 50. He also wanted to take game 82 off for the playoffs. So he goes out, bangs out 3 goals in St. Louis on Ryan Miller in about 10 minutes. And he's like, all right, I'll see you guys for game 1. I mean, that's, I think, the mentality he's going to bring to it here. When he gets within 10, it's going to get special real fast.
So here's one thing that I know you pay attention to every little detail because I've had the privilege of working with you. Why doesn't Ovechkin have a branded stick that he's playing with?
I don't know the answer to that for this year, except that is it one that he wants to use that isn't sanctioned, maybe? This
is why I'm asking the question, because once he gets to the magical milestone of the Gretzky goal scoring, that stick's going in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well, that's true.
So I'm just curious, is he holding out until he's like 2 or 3 away and going to the highest bidder? Because I know he's always been a CCM guy.
He has been, and I'm honestly not sure the reason why. But that gives me something to ask in the very near future, maybe as soon as tomorrow. I'll have to look into that.
No, it's because I take care of my partners. Jimmy could tell you, and John and I did the Olympics together. Do you have one favorite moment from Pyeongchang? Because we got a chance to watch the Americans and the Canadian women play, and the level of hockey I thought was spectacular. Do you have one instance you remember from Pyeongchang?
I'm going to give you an underrated one because obviously with Team USA winning gold, that was a huge thing. And being around it, the whole Olympic experience for the first time every day was special. But it was actually being a part of calling games, and a couple of them with the unified team, with Korea, with North and South playing together. And the atmosphere that was around that and all of the pageantry around it. And it was just something beyond hockey to me, where you hoped that, there will be more of a peaceful solution on the Korean Peninsula one day. But for one tournament, it was. And to have I still have the unified Korean flag hanging in my office. They handed them out in the arena that day. Cool. And it just seemed like a unifying moment that I couldn't believe. It's one of those moments, and I do get a few of those working around Alex Ovechkin, but to be able to be on the mic for something of that magnitude and in a full building, and it just seems like more than a hockey game that day. That was a good one for me.
Jimmy, I just have one more because I listen to John a lot. So and I never talked to him about it. So one of your vintage calls at the end of a game, good morning, good afternoon, good night. Where did that come from?
Totally made up one night. I don't even know how it came out. It started in Hershey. And the funny part is it was after my coach at the time was Paul Fixer. We were still under the Colorado flag. This was before Washington. And he was listening to the game tape, and I'd said it was a big win. Hershey was trying to make a push. They were trying to get in the playoffs. And I'd said it at the end of a game against Wilkes-Barre Scranton. And he had said, hey, you know what? If you're ever thinking of a tagline, you should think about using that. So we played Wilkes at home because in the A, you'll play a team
that was
100 times a year.
Yeah.
So the same thing happens, and I dropped it in. And then I think the third game, I honestly forgot. And then the fans, somebody's like, hey, why don't you say that good morning thing you said? So it kind of became a thing in Hershey. I wasn't going to bring it to Washington. I really wasn't. And I tell a story all the time. Tarek El-Bashir, who works for Monumental now, has worked with The Athletic and NBC Washington. He's been everywhere. TNT now too. And it was the beat writer for the Washington Post at the time, and he called to interview me when I got the job. And it was the first thing he asked me, because while Hershey was winning championships, the games were airing on TV here. So they kind of knew me in this market anyway before I got here. And he said, "Hey, are you going to keep that good morning, good afternoon, good night thing?" I said, "Well, I wasn't sure, but now that you're asking me and the Post is asking me, maybe I should." And I decided to, and I'm like, well, I can't stop now. So 14 years later, that's just what I do at the end of the game.
I'm telling you, Jimmy, it's vintage. It's great. It's not obnoxious. And it plays well. Like Johnny, it plays so well. It was an honor working with you. I cannot thank you enough for doing this. You look fantastic. Congratulations on you winning your battle.
Well, thanks, Pierre. I followed in your footsteps. We're brothers on that. Maybe not in the best of ways, but we got through it, and here we are, and we're glad for it. And one of these days, we got to do some work again together. One of these days, that's too much fun working with you.
That's coming. We'll work that out. That's
we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Look forward to seeing you around the rink, John. We appreciate you taking the time. All right.
All right. Thanks,
Keep
fellas.
it up, Johnny. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Here we go. John Walton join us here on the eye test, talking some Washington Capitals. And, speaking of vintage, and as you guys were talking about the stick there, Pierre, I'd love to see Ovi pull out a Sherwood or a Northwood and bring a wooden stick.
Like a wood
stick? And do it for that game when he's on the verge of it, grab it, do it, and with that stick. Wouldn't that be something?
It would be amazing. One of the hardest shooters of all time is the great Al McInnes.
Yeah.
And I have so much respect for Al. He's an amazing hockey man. I'm telling you.
You had some really good things to say, by the way, about Al McNeil yesterday. I saw.
Well, they're both Calgary Flames at heart, and both from the same part of the Maritimes. I'm just telling you. And obviously, I can just tell you about Al McInnes. I once asked him, because he's working in St. Louis now. And I said, "Hey, Al, I got to ask you, like, with all these fancy sticks and stuff, I used to draw up game plans to try to take away your shot on the power play." And I would tell him, "Oh, that was a good idea, this and that." I said, like, would you shoot the puck harder if you had one of these new sticks? He goes, "I don't even know if I could catch a pass with the new stick." He goes, "I think I could shoot it harder with the wood stick." I mean, think about it. And then he told me a thing that he had done. I don't even know if anybody knows this.
Yeah.
He had 3 little in each stick, because he shot it so hard. There were 3 little short pieces. I don't know if they were brass or if they were metal that would attach the blade to the shaft of the wood stick.
Okay.
He'd have it built in there.
Wow.
And all the players I coached over time, I don't remember one of our guys ever doing that. And he said it was to give me stability when I would crank it. Because you got to remember, he was a righty that always played on the right side, and Suter, Gary, was his partner for a long time. He was a lefty that played on the left side. So they were always on their strong side. They kept the puck. In those days, Calgary was really good. They kept the puck in the offensive zone better than probably 95% of the teams in the league, because their 2 best defensemen, lefty, righty, they both played on their strong sides.
Yeah.
Made a big difference, Jimmy.
As we were talking about this, Pierre, and I'm just thinking in my head, like, how many teams really, they may I shouldn't say have that weapon, because a lot of teams do have a weapon like an Al McInnes to shoot it from outside and just really crank it in there. But not many teams use that anymore. Like, you're right. Back in the day, that was part of the game plan, was utilizing his shot. And even if he didn't score on it, it's creating havoc. It's making the defense prepare a different way than they might usually. You don't see many teams utilize that anymore.
No, but who changed a lot of that defensively? John Tortorella. I will tell you right now, when he was with the Rangers, and the Rangers were really running, they were running big smoke. They were good. And John was a big part of it. He got his guys to buy into the shot blocking thing. And it wasn't just a defenseman. It was the forwards too. Mm-hmm. And so that took away a lot of shooting opportunities.
Right. Yeah.
And teams, imitation's the finest form of flattery.
Mm-hmm.
So you teach players, don't go body on body, because that's what they used to teach. Make the guy skate through you. Now play body on stick.
Yep.
And so the more tape you watch, the more you see, okay, how do we take that one-timer away?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look like Ovechkin, having to defend against Ovechkin, that became an issue.
Yeah.
And the Rangers in Washington would play a lot.
Yep.
If you were playing, who was a vicious one-time shooter back in the day? I'm just trying to think off the top of my head that really intimidated people. Vladimir Malahov. Vladimir Malahoff, when he played in Montreal in particular, he probably had the hardest shot in the league. Nobody talked about it. But you could see teams just started mirroring him. And he couldn't get pucks through near the end because guys would just take away his shooting lane.
Yeah.
So,
it's changed a lot. Pierre, before we get to Betway and my sick pick and the Q&A, one other thing I want to bring up, we were talking about it earlier quickly here, an article about Ray Shero in NHL.com today. What do you know? And as our listeners, our loyal listeners and viewers here will know, we've been trying to say that he deserves another job in the league right now. And, all of a sudden he's front and center on NHL.com. What do you know?
That's good. It's appropriate. Nick Kostanica, who was a really good reporter back in the day with Detroit, very, very good reporter, and he's very thorough. I thought it was well written. I think it's a good column. I think it's very appropriate. Ray should be running an NHL team. When you look at some of the people that are running teams and he's not, you're like, are you kidding me? But yeah, I think that column was really appropriate. Talks about his relationship with Billy Guerin going into the Four Nations, which we're very proud to be a part of and excited about. So it's all, that stuff's all good. But Rajan Shero is a really special hockey guy, Jimmy, and you haven't gotten to know him as well as you will. But I can tell you, he is an elite hockey man. You can ask David Poyle, you can ask Randy Sexton, you can ask Billy Guerin. Hey, the gift that kept on giving for Jimmy Rutherford when he went to Pittsburgh were all the draft picks that Ray Shero and his staff put together. Yeah.
Speaking of those Pittsburgh Penguins, good segue there. We were also talking about them and kind of, they still want to compete. They still want to win one more or take a run for the guys that, did so much for them, and Malkin and Crosby and Letang, but they're kind of stuck. Like, how do you do it with the cap hits you have right now? And one of them that is probably causing some problems right now is Erik Karlsson's, and that's not.
It's a problem.
Contract. Yeah, it's just the contract I'm talking about. Yeah,
it's a problem. So here's the thing: Gino's not the same player. I think everybody knows that. Father time is starting to catch up to Gino. But if you look at Pittsburgh and you look at their right side, just if you get a chance, if you're a fan of hockey, go to Puckpedia and look at the right side of the Pittsburgh Penguin lineup. Okay, it's not being mean; it's just an exercise. Outside of Brian Rust, they're not scoring on the right side.
No,
they're just not. I'm just telling you, they're not.
No.
So it's a problem. It's a problem. Yeah. So this is Pittsburgh's season coming up. Tonight against Columbus at home. Home against Edmonton. Home against Ottawa. Home against Tampa. Home against Seattle. That's 5 straight games at home.
Mm-hmm. You got to take 3 out of those 5 at least. 4. Yeah.
4, because they're chasing. They've got game. They don't have games in hand. They're chasing.
Yep. And those teams too. Columbus is no slouch. They're right behind them in the standings.
No, Ottawa's, that's what I'm saying. That's a game 7. Tonight's a game 7. Pittsburgh, Columbus. Whoever would have said that. Edmonton's coming in because now they're smelling blood, and they know. If you look at the West, right now, LA's.
We talked about this yesterday.
LA's 4 in a row. Vegas won 2 in a row, but I think they've won 8 of their last 10. So Edmonton knows if I want to stay with the big boys, we got to keep winning. Yep. Ottawa's chasing, and they think they're going to make the playoffs, even though Montreal passed them last night. How about Montreal being in the playoffs?
Oh, we're going to get to that.
Tampa Bay is now on the cusp of being out of the playoffs. So they have to win. And Seattle, that loss last night to New Jersey, after Jersey had lost 4 in a row, they lose at home. Yeah. Seattle has no wiggle room.
No,
if they want to make it. I don't know how that plays. I don't know how that plays in Seattle. I have no idea.
The Bruins, of course, welcoming the aforementioned Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl at the Garden tonight. Not getting easier for them either. So that's another team that has no wiggle room, as you said there. All right, quickly before we get into our last tier of the show here, Montreal Canadiens. Now here, we should have teed up the recording. I was half right. I got one of the 2 bets. I did say that Montreal would come back. I was wrong that Vancouver would have the lead after the first period. Credit to Montreal for making me wrong there, for coming out And like we said, it's only natural that you come out a little flat in the first period back home after a long road trip. That's natural. Nobody could knock them if that was the case. And they said, screw that. We're on a roll. We're going to keep this going. Look, Pierre, this is like teams got to pay attention now. If they weren't already, you need to pay attention to the Montreal Canadiens right now. This is a dangerous team. I'm not saying they're going on to win a Stanley Cup. I'm not even saying they'll make the playoffs, but they are a dangerous team, and you got to watch. You got to take them seriously right now. You can't look past them.
I think that's such a good comment from you. I really do. They're dangerous, and you're not embellishing. Like you're not being a fanboy. They are dangerous. That's number one. Number two, they got pride in wearing the CH.
Yep.
There are no passengers there.
That's back.
Those guys want to be there. You see it. Like, there are no passengers there. That's one more. And this is the big one. 48, that little left defenseman that wasn't supposed to be able to play. Didn't people tell us that?
Yeah.
Yeah, people told us that. I know. I remember. He's going to be the rookie of the year in the league.
Yep. And it's interesting how all of a sudden now, I mean, people are hailing him the same way. We're, I don't want to get into that. All we're going to say is he's come as advertised. If you've watched the eye test and if you've listened to Pierre as well on TSN 690, he has come as advertised. And Pierre, like I said to you last night, the vision is what gets me. There's players that we've seen over time, and I'm not going to name names right now because I don't want to. It's unfair to him to say the names that are going through my head. But there's certain players that just have this gift to see where everything's going, to understand where the pace of it's going, where the puck's going to go, to just see the future. And he sees it. It's amazing to watch. It really is.
I agree. Perfectly said. I totally agree. Get the Betway so we can get to our callers.
Let's do it. Let's get to Betway right now. As you know, they've still got that special going. They're extending it here into the new year. So if you go all the way with Betway right now, you can go over there, or you sign up with the QR code right in front of you. If you're watching, you'll get a free bet up to $200 if your first bet loses. You can as well go to the details section on the website and click there to set up a new account and redeem the welcome offer. That offer is only available to new customers. Terms and conditions apply. It is not available in Ontario right now. You must be 18 plus and please play responsibly. Let's go to the sick pick of the day.
It's time for Sick Picks. Brought to you by Betway.
All right, Pierre. We mentioned the Edmonton Oilers earlier. You're in Boston tonight. I'm going to go with the Edmonton Oilers on the puck line, -1.5 over the Boston Bruins. You can get some great value. That's at +160 right now at Betway if you want. Also, we mentioned Detroit Red Wings, the Ottawa Senators. Crucial 4-point game there for both teams. I'm liking the Wings to keep it going here. Give me the Red Wings on the money line. I think the Senators have done a great job turning things around, but as any team would go through, they're going through tough times right now without their goalie, Linus Ullmark, who is having some back problems, as we know. I think the Red Wings take advantage of that, and they win on home ice. So the Red Wings on the money line and the Edmonton Oilers on the puck line. Let's get to the Q&A. What do we got? Mike, Jimmy, and Pierre, what do you think Goolie's ceiling is? His progression has been very impressive.
He's a top 4 guy in any team that's got a chance to win the cup, be a playoff team. You see his physicality last night, especially early in the game against Jonathan Lekkerimäki. That was a massive hit that really got the Canadiens going in that game. He was physical the entire night. He's making real good passes. He's clearly offensive when he has to be with his shooting ability. I've been watching him a long time, whether it was in Prince Albert or in Edmonton. He's a real deal. The Canes got him in a real good position in the draft. He's been developed properly, and he keeps getting better. So he's a top 4 guy for any team in the league. I don't think he's a 1, but he's a 2, 3, or 4. He's a 2,
All
3,
right.
or 4.
Next question. A to Z meet. Boston's position is very fragile, in my opinion. -20 goal differential at the halfway point. What do you add at the deadline to get them over the hump?
Go, Jimmy. This is your team. Go.
As I said to Pierre a couple times in the last few days, actually, the problem Boston's in right now, if they really want to make an impact add, is that they're going to, in order to fill a hole, they'll create a hole. So in other words, let's say they want to get more scoring up front. Well, they're going to have to give up somebody big on D. I'm not going to name names, but somebody in their top 4 on that roster right now, I think, is to really get an impact guy that could come in there and make a difference in their top 6. They're in a peculiar position right now. Like, they don't have enough prospects or picks stockpiled to really use that as a weapon to go out and get an impact player. So it's going to be somebody on the roster. So you have to feel confident enough that you have enough depth on that roster to compensate for the hole you might create to get the guy at the deadline. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, no, it's fair. When's Hampus Lindholm coming back?
We don't know yet. He skated today, so that's a good sign. But we don't know yet. I think I know they need him bad, Pierre, but that's a guy don't rush back because you're going to need him a lot down the stretch run.
Do you think they miss Grzelcyk?
Yes. And I think a lot of Bruins fans wouldn't have thought that, but they do. They really do. And you know what the biggest thing too? Look at the offense from the back end this year compared to years when Grzelcyk was here. There's a difference. All right, next question. Posting it on 130. Hi, Jimmy and Pierre. Would Cole Hudson make the same impact with the Capitals as Lane has with the Habs? Give it time. Cole is slightly bigger than Lane.
So I would say not yet. There's little things that Lane does better than him, and one of them is dominating the puck coming out of his own zone. Cole's not there yet. Cole doesn't walk the line as well as Lane does, but Cole's still younger. I think that's going to come. And I see Cole play a ton, and he's got major upside. So both kids were second-round picks, and it's both because their size. Talent-wise, they're both first-round players.
Yep. All right, next question. Question: has Hockey Canada considered copying the U.S. National Development Program in regards to having guys playing together year-round in their late teens instead of just assembling guys for international play?
No, they can't because of major junior hockey. It'll never happen in Canada. No chance. The major junior operators will never let that happen. And you know what? They shouldn't.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
They shouldn't. Look at Hockey Canada's they've done a good job for a long time, but the last couple of years, there's been a lot of stuff going on, and politics. Yeah, it's away from the ring.
Yep.
Politics has played a bigger role than hockey has, and I understand there's a lot of stuff that went on that wasn't good.
Yeah.
So they're trying to fix stuff. That being said, there should be hockey decision makers, and there should be other people making decisions. That's all. But that's never happened in hockey. No chance. Major juniors is going to get bigger. It's not getting smaller.
And Pierre, as you've said before to me, like, I mean, it's sometimes what U.S. does, sometimes they miss out on players because they weren't part of that program. You know, like sometimes those guys slip through the cracks there too. So it goes both ways. All right. Next question. Alex Evanowski, the thing that surprised me about Bedard is that I really believed he would have way more goals than he has right now. The playmaking has surprised me positively. Why so few goals? Alex, Pierre, you can answer this too, but my thing would be maybe the scouting report was off. Maybe they looked at him as a different type of player than what he really is. I don't know. But he also doesn't have a lot of supporting cast around him right now. I'll give him that.
Supporting cast is a key. So you're a kid going on the road. You're getting a steady diet of the biggest guys in the valley, and they're going to beat you up, and you're not a big kid to begin with. And that hit he took last year from Brendan Smith, I don't care what anybody says, that got his attention. And, you know, when you're a skilled player like that and you're used to being able to do that, and then all of a sudden you can't do that anymore, that takes a little bit of your artillery away. I'm not saying he's shy, because he's not. He's not shy. He's not shy. You can't play in the Western Hockey League the way he did and be shy. He's a talented kid. He'll get going, but they're further away from fixing Chicago than they're telling you.
Yeah,
they're further away.
And you know, as we always do, look, we said last year that San Jose needed to do some things, Pierre, to increase their rebuild and really surround, insulate the young guys there, Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini. They have, and they are now, I think it's fair to say, a much more fun team, a much more competitive team to watch than the Chicago Blackhawks.
I'm prepared to say San Jose is a must-watch team. If you love hockey, watch them play. They play a fun style. They got an energetic coaching staff. I think Warsofsky, the new coach, has done a really good job. I think they're fine. Like, Will Smith keeps getting better. Obviously, Macklin's at another level. But they got Yeah, but
Oof.
Foley going in there has been huge. Barkley, Goudreau, like older guys to get that thing going and keep those kids grounded. It's been good. It's been good.
Yeah. All right, next question. WPHL, how do GMs handle future considerations? Do they ever materialize into anything?
You want me to tell you a good story on Freddie Charles? Freddie Charles stands for future considerations. So I was in my office in Hartford one night, and a GM in the league called me up, and he said, we need a defenseman. We're in a pinch. I will not tell you the team, and I won't tell you the GM, and I won't tell you the player. But I said, yeah, we can do something to help you out. We're a little bit overstocked at that position. And he said, would you give me this player? And I said, as a matter of fact, I can give it to you, no problem. I can't take any salary back, though. Like, my owner doesn't want me taking any, because it's an American League deal. Back then, there was the American League and the IHL. So we were trading a player from the American League to the IHL. So he says to me, well, what do you want? He said, well, what do you got? And he says, well, I don't want to give you any money. I said, I'll tell you what. We'll take a Brett Hull autographed stick and we'll sell it. No, I said this. I'm not kidding you. I said, we'll sell it at our foundation dinner at the end of the year. And the GM said to me, you would do that? I said, absolutely. I want this kid to get a chance to play because he's not going to play here. He wasn't going to play for us. So he's going to go to a place where I know he's going to be looked after. He's going to play. And we got a cool item to auction off. And so, you know how the guy said, well, does Freddie Charles ever work out for you? Yeah, we got the stick and we sold it.
Yep.
It worked out.
Wow.
It was fun. It worked out. It was a good story.
That's a great story. I love it. Hey, at least you weren't giving up Babe Ruth for a play.
No, but I wanted this kid really had huge upside, but he got sick and injured and it wasn't going to work. So he ended up playing a couple of years there in the IHL, and then he went home. But look, I wanted the kid to get a chance, and it was a good situation for him, and it was a good one for us.
Good for you. Creative. I like it. All right, next question. Ron LaRoque, what was the reason of stopping NHL regular season games at neutral sites in Canada? I remember we used to get a couple games in Saskatoon. Just curious. Thank you.
Okay, so one of the teams you saw in Saskatoon, because we went there twice, were the Hartford Whalers. And one time we lost a game to the Winnipeg Jets there. We had a 6-2 lead going into the third period. And Phil Housley was playing on defense for Winnipeg, and Mark Jansen was one of our tough guys. And Mark got in a collision with one of their players, and I think it might have been Thomas Steen, and he cut him. So they didn't just call a double minor. They called him 5 in a game, I think. They came back, and they won the game 7-6, I believe. So I was mad. I was really angry. And I won't tell you the referee because it's not appropriate, but I went in the hallway, and I think it's the first time, like, I went crazy. And thank goodness our trainer, Bud Gavea, grabbed me. He's like, what are you doing? You're going to get suspended. I'm like, you're right. I'm going to get suspended. Thank you. Anyways, the moral of that story is I remember the next time we went into Saskatoon, and I forget who we were playing. And I looked at the sideboards, and I go, hey, what are we doing in L.A.? We're supposed to be in Saskatoon. And Johnny Forsland says to me, he goes, I'm with you. Like, this is weird, because Johnny was doing our radio and our TV with Chuck Caton. Remember when the LA Kings were owned by Bruce McNall?
Yeah.
So Bruce McNall sold all the advertising for the sideboards for those neutral site games that Mario was asking about, or Ron's asking about. Ron. So we walked into the rink in Saskatoon, you looked at the boards. All the advertisement was the same as what it was at
the Forum.
In the Forum in LA.
Yeah.
So I said, like, Johnny, what are we doing here? I thought we were in Saskatoon. We were in Saskatoon, but the boards were just like the boards in LA.
Huh.
Yeah. So I'll tell you why they stopped those, because it made it an 84 game schedule rather than an 82 game schedule. And I think eventually there will be an 84 game schedule, but I think that's one of the reasons why it stopped.
Okay.
I think it stopped because of that.
All right, next question. Postnet on 130. The Habs still take too many penalties and bad ones with league leaders. How do they minimize this going forward?
I'm going to tell you right now, I guarantee you there was a video session today with Cole Caulfield. Mm-hmm. That was a terrible penalty that allowed Vancouver to tie the game, and they're fortunate they came back and won. So I think that just the presence, and Scotty was the best at this, Bowman. If he wasn't happy with a player, he'd make sure that everybody was in the room, and he'd say, Jimmy, I'd like to see you in my office, please. And all the guys like, uh-oh, he's going to the principal's office. Jimmy's in trouble. And so I don't think Marty will do it that way because it's a little different time. But I think once they bring him in the office, and they will, they're going to show it to him.
Yep.
I think it'll get everybody's attention.
Interesting. Maybe they do it by email now. Who knows?
I don't think that works. I don't think that's going to happen.
Next question. All right, we got 12. Let's roll through.
We're not leaving anybody hanging. We're going.
Yep. Randy Workman, with the emergence of Matthew Knees, does this make Nick Robinson expendable?
I think all the left wingers make Matthew Knies, with Max Pacioretty, with Bobby McMahon, with Steven Lorentz. I think it makes Nick Robertson. Yeah, if they want to move him, they'll move him.
All right, next question. Alex Ivanowski, I think the job the Washington Capitals front office has done is second to none. From 2019 till now, they truly pressed almost every button correctly on how to retool on the fly. Do you agree? Yes, 100%.
100% we agree, and it was so great to have Johnny Walton on because he agrees as well. He agrees as well. So we totally agree, Alex. Yep.
All right, next question. Marquet American, don't you think NHL teams should play one game at their AHL team's arena for the fans?
A lot of times they do their preseason games, but I have no problem with that. I don't want to say the player's name, but we made a trade with New Jersey once, and the contract was for us to play a preseason game at their minor league building, but they gave us the gate. That was part of the deal. We got the gate in that deal. So I wouldn't say everybody does it. But I think in preseason there's an appetite. I know the Bruins play down in Providence.
They don't anymore, Pierre. They haven't.
Oh, they don't.
The last few years they have not. Yeah,
but they used to do it, right, Jimmy? Because I know they used to go up. They used to go play in Maine too. I mean, we did it, but I don't know what the numbers are. I'm just going to say this: a lot of times these owners are looking at the numbers they get, and they use the season ticket packages in preseason too. So if you buy a season ticket, you got to buy it for your rink and. I don't know how many people want to travel to their American League city. So that could be part of it too.
All right. Next question. GB. How much bigger is goalie equipment now versus, let's say, the 70s? Goalies seem huge. Even Fleury, skinny guy, looks like the Michelin Man. They are, but I mean, in the last few years, they've trimmed it a bit, right, Pierre? But it's still not much.
No, so here's what you got to do. So there's some great pictures from the 70s, color pictures. Go look at when guys would come down the wing, and you can see all four corners and even the 5-hole. And then go look at the pictures now when guys come down the wing. They don't see anything. They don't even see the long side corners because the guys are so big. So there's a lot to that. The one thing they call it, quote unquote, proportionality. That's because how they divine or decide how big the pads are going to be, proportional to the size of your body. But no, it's a great point. The goalies are big, but they're also Pekka Rinne. Have you ever seen Pekka Rinne without his hockey equipment on? He's freaking massive, man. Like he would walk in an NFL dressing room and everybody say, "You belong here. Hey, you belong here." Now, I don't know how many guys have been in an NFL dressing room, but I'm telling you, if you're not a big guy, they know right away you don't belong there.
Yep.
They know.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Kathleen, do American players pay taxes in Canada and the U.S.? Conversely, do Canadian players pay taxes in both countries? Yes.
Yes, they do, Kathleen, and that's why they have accountants, because they get refunds from respective countries. But yes, they do. And I will tell you this, if you're an American player, and I was one playing overseas, they still get you. The tax man still gets you when you're playing overseas.
Even us media people, too. All right, next question. Max R, when do the Habs consider moving first-round picks for players with the number of young players they already have? They won't all fit on the team anyways. Max, I would think that's in play right now, I would think, depending on who
it depends on how early you're picking, and it depends how deep the draft is, and it depends on what your organizational need is. But it's not a foreign concept. It's something they should consider. I wouldn't be definitive and say, yeah, they got to do that, but it's definitely something they should be looking at.
All right, next question. Randy Workman, was Thompson snubbed for Canada?
I don't think so, Randy. I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't think there was I don't know. We'll get into it tomorrow, maybe on the Canadian.
Oh, no, here. So Binnington's won a Stanley Cup.
Yep.
Aiden Hill's won a Stanley Cup as a starter. And Montembeault has just had an amazing year. Like if the playoffs started tonight, the Montreal Canadiens are in. If Sam Montembeault is not the goalie, they're in last place in the Eastern Conference. So, I guess if they took 4 goalies, maybe Logan would be considered.
Yep. And I also think, too, he still could be considered for the Olympics. Always remember that.
Yeah. This is just a dress rehearsal. This is nothing set in stone.
All right, next question. Postnet on 130. Do shop blockers wear special pads, chin, and ankle pants?
Well, a lot of guys do stuff on their skates for sure. In terms of in their pants, I guess everybody, I don't know. Everybody's got a different thing.
Yeah. All right, next question. We're on the rope. What would Scotty Bowman say if asked why his management career with Buffalo wasn't as successful as his coaching career?
Well, they drafted really well. If you look at it, they drafted amazingly well. They missed on one, Yuri Dudacek, who was a really good player for whatever reason. It just didn't materialize. But if you look at whether it's Uwe Krupp, whether it's Dave Andrechuk, whether it's John Tucker, whether it's Darren Pupa, you start looking at the draft picks that Scotty accumulated when he was in Buffalo. It's pretty amazing. I mean, look at some of the players. The numbers don't lie. They just, for whatever reason, they couldn't put it together. They just couldn't put it together. But they drafted a lot of good players when he was there. A lot of good players.
All right, next question. Brian from Gurney. Question: with the NHL moving towards bigger and more skilled forwards, could a scrappy 5'8", 220-pound goal-scoring right wing land on a roster? It depends who it is. Depends on the skill, right?
5'8", 220. How fast does 5'8", 220 move? That's the biggest question.
Yeah. That's like me, but 40 pounds bigger. I don't know if that's going to work. I think the only thing I got going for me is my light of foot, but I don't know. Who knows? Question. FFFF. Hey, Pierre, what do you think of the forward Davidson who plays for Laval Rocket? Does he have a future in the NHL?
I do. I think he does have a future. I like how opportunistic he is. I like how he wants the puck on his stick. I like his release point on his shot. Do I think he's a lead pipe cinch to make it? No. Do I think he's got a chance to make it? Yes, I do. Yeah, I do.
All right. Next question. Sound the siren. What's up? Pierre, do you know offhand how many Pittsburgh versus Washington games you called?
I couldn't tell you. A lot. Well, so let's see. 2021. 2001 to 2021. So 20 years.
Wow.
A lot.
Do you think that's the most of any matchup?
Because no, there were a lot of Chicago.
Okay.
A lot of Detroit. Because if you look at it, those time frames, Pittsburgh was dominant, Chicago was dominant, Detroit was dominant. And then you had other teams sneaking in, like Boston kind of snuck in, Vancouver kind of snuck in, LA snuck in. So even Anaheim, like 07 Cup, Anaheim beats Ottawa.
Yep.
So there were a couple groups that kind of snuck in, but they'd be up. I did a lot. I did a lot of them. I can tell you that.
All right. That's about it. That's what we got. Nice. A lot of questions today. I love it. And we want to thank John Walton for joining us.
Johnny was so good. He was so good.
He was. We want to thank the boys back in Montreal. Sammy, great job. We appreciate it. And thank you, the viewers and the listeners. And tomorrow, Pierre, we got another guest coming on from Daily Face Off. He's the same company there as our good friend Jeff Merrick. Johnny Lazarus, former UMass man.
That's why you called him on, Johnny. Johnny's a UMass guy.
Hey, you know what, though? He knows the Rangers well, so we're going to talk.
No, he knows the Islanders, the Rangers, the Devils. He works hard at his job. He does. Johnny works really hard.
Looking forward to having Johnny on here.
Hey, what about your on-campus Friday guest?
Just going to go there. And Pierre, you set that up, so you tell them about it, my friend.
So the last 2 years, the number one team in Division III hockey is Hobart College in Geneva, New York. and their coach is a man by the name of Mark Taylor. And Mark Taylor was a really good player. He's a kid from Canton, New York. He coached Division I hockey forever as an assistant, took the Hobart job, probably planning 25 to 30 years ago that he was going to just move on to Division I. He's stayed there ever since. He's built up a behemoth. They would beat a lot of Division I teams at Hobart. They would. They're really good. The building's full all the time. They call it the Cooler. They're the defending 2-time national champions. They're the only team in college hockey, I'm very comfortable saying this, in the year 2024, from January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024. Never lost a game, Jimmy.
Wow. There you go.
They're undefeated in 2024.
And I think somebody has a Hobart connection too, doesn't he?
Yeah. I was on the first ever varsity team there.
There you go.
Yeah.
God bless. All right.
Not just for that sport either.
You're gonna sing the song, the alumni, the
fight song.
Yeah.
No. I don't want to scare away the viewers that we have.
All right. Well, looking forward to that. And again, thanks to everyone out there for listening and watching. We will talk to you tomorrow on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network.
Thanks, everybody.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.